we have been having some really constructive conversations here at our cabinet retreat. Our focus really has been and will continue to be the economy, the economy, the economy.
I guess it's the economy. Chrystia Freeland speaking at the Liberal Cabinet Retreat. That retreat in Prince Edward Island wraps up today, the cabinet meeting in a bid to restore Canadians' sense of economic security and their confidence in the government as the Conservative Party continues to make strong gains in the polls. With more on this, let's go to Vassy Kapelos, CTV News chief political correspondent, and of course, the wonderful host of the Vassy Kapelos Show, which airs right after this one on CJAD 800. Vassy, welcome to the program.
Hi, Elias. So great to be with you.
Now, listen, I watch you and I listen to you all the time, and you get me the facts and you get me the news here. But you know what? I want you to spill the tea this morning. I want the juicy, juicy gossip. Are the knives out in Prince Edward Island? What are Liberals telling you behind the scenes?
I'm glad you asked. I think I wouldn't say that knives are out, but I would say, particularly relative to other retreats that I've covered at the outset of their mandate years ago, back in 2015 and 2016, when I was still kind of reporting rather than hosting, there is a whole lot less optimism and a whole lot more or a higher level of cognizance around the challenges that they face and sort of like the weaknesses and vulnerabilities that are exposed and have been exposed over the past few months, particularly in contrast to the Conservatives. By that, I mean they're worried, right? They're nervous. They feel like the summer has seen a cementing and a winding up the Tories' lead, particularly where the cost of living issue is concerned. And I've, anxiously been trying to get in touch with as many of them as possible following the Prime Minister's press conference this morning to see if the fact that he really didn't put any specifics on the table about how they're going to address the housing crisis or cost of living more broadly, like if that was a disappointment to them. And so far, the answer has been a pretty much resounding yes. Like they get that a lack of specifics will fall flat with Canadians, and they, anticipate a little bit more pain for them from the Conservatives on the prospects for their own party based on that.
Vassy, of course, before this retreat, not too long ago, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had a pretty big cabinet shuffle, a major one. Everyone basically played musical chairs if they weren't staying in their post and moved around. So is part of the reason for this retreat to try and get everyone and so many new faces all on the same page?
I think to a certain degree, yes. They are very regular. Like they usually happen once or twice a year, so it's not abnormal to hold one. But since the initial retreat back in 2015, after the initial cabinet was announced, I have not witnessed a bigger reorganization of the cabinet, right? Like the idea is to make it seem like this is all brand new and very different or refreshed or whatever whatever anyone wants to call it. And so, yes, it is. They kind of had this 3-week break after the announcement. Offices are still being sorted out, that kind of thing. And then this was about getting all on the same page. They have a certain number of meetings that, they go through each bill that they're going to introduce in the fall. So that it's sort of like a practical aspect to all of this, but as well the politics of it, right? Like how are they going to augment what they're doing or counter the narrative that's out there around what they're not doing? All of that was kind of the purpose of the meetings over the last 3 days.
How much is the new fresh face Pierre Poilievre, no glasses, wearing the T-shirt blazer Pierre Poilievre, how much is that looming over this cabinet retreat? And with that, I mean, his rising poll numbers.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's not a lot of them that are talking specifically about his own image or anything, but I think the poll numbers that you point to are a factor. Certainly, they have been a huge factor in determining that the biggest political imperative this government faces right now is the housing crisis. And I say that because the laser-like focus of the Conservatives, and in particular Pierre Poilievre, on that issue has been to their benefit in the polls. Now, writ large, there's a new poll out today that shows Canadians are a little bit confused about who they are going to blame for the housing crisis. Is it the federal government? Is it provinces? Is it municipalities? And that makes sense because all three levels of government have jurisdiction, different levels of jurisdiction over the issue. But on the federal scene, the Conservatives have been successful in pointing the finger continually at the Liberals, and it is resonating with voters. That's not to say the Conservatives won't have their own set of challenges in a potential election campaign when their policy ideas are going to have to be put on the table. And Canadians will have to judge whether or not what they're proposing will actually fix the problem as well. But right now, it's the government on the hot seat, right? And the polls show that. The questions directed at the Prime Minister today show that. And I think what surprised me the most coming out of this is kind of, the lack of answers, given how everyone here realizes this is like the biggest political problem they face.
We're with Vassy Kapelos, who is live in Prince Edward Island, talking about the Liberals' cabinet retreat. Vassy, we spoke to the CEO of Palace Data on some of the polling that's come out this week, and we spoke about this notion and this question of whether or not Justin Trudeau is now a liability to his party as he looks to gain a fourth mandate. I know he was asked that question, in fact, earlier this week. What are you hearing on that, about Justin Trudeau as a liability to his party?
I think it depends who you're talking to, but in reference to the people who are here, I think there is still some level of support, but there is also a recognition of that very idea, right? And I think that that's not also something brand new in the 2021 election in particular, but even in 2019, the results for the Liberals were a lot less successful, right? They ultimately won, and not to take away from that, but they were less successful than they were in 2015. And a lot of that has to do with the Prime Minister himself, right? Polling shows very clearly that he is not necessarily the liability for his party, but he has become more of one. His negatives have risen, his positives have dropped, the perception among the public. People have an opinion one way or the other. I can tell you, all the cabs I've taken here, or the people I run into on the streets, everybody has an opinion about him. In 2015, that ultimately was to his advantage. The question as we go through election after election after election is, to what degree does that dissipate? And I think that's why that question was a pertinent one. It was good that reporter asked it. She didn't get a particularly specific answer in response. No surprise, but I do get it. She was also talking about how the people camping next to her had one of those bumpers with an expletive and the Prime Minister's name next to it. And that is indicative of the level of resentment people have towards him. I'm not saying it's, justified, but I do think that that's something you can't ignore. And it's just hard to know right now to what degree he will remain or a liability, or whether that increases over time or decreases. I don't know.
As this retreat wraps up here, at the end of things, sometimes people put up banners with the messaging from the last few days. I guess there wouldn't be a mission accomplished banner behind the Prime Minister today, but if there was a banner about the last few days in the retreat, what do you think the messaging would be on that banner?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. And to be honest, I think for me, the story is that I don't know what I would put on that thing. We're going to keep talking. I don't know. I honestly, I get it. I'm not trying to be glib. I understand that this is a very complex issue, right? And I'm not trying to say the government's done nothing, but there's something to be said about meeting the moment, either through rhetoric or through actual pragmatic action. And both of those were kind of absent. There's just, if you're not putting anything specific on the table to combat a crisis of this magnitude, at least tell us when you will. And there wasn't even that. Just a whole lot of more collaboration, more talking, more working on this. But I'm not sure, how to what degree that resonates with people.
At least the banner doesn't say this specific problem is not necessarily a federal responsibility. At least the banner doesn't say that.
Learned his lesson there, yeah.
Vassy, great talking to you. I'll be listening when you get back behind the microphone on your show, and thanks so much this morning.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, Elias. My pleasure.
That's Vassy Kapelos, CTV News chief political correspondent, and of course the host of the Vassy Kapelos Show.